Hey guys, today on JD Cars, we're going to be doing a full brake flush and brake bleeding on the BMW E90. So we've got this puppy in the garage here, and the materials we'll be needing today is of course some brake fluid. I'm choosing to use a vacuum pump for this job so I can do it myself without another person pressing on the brake pedal. We've got a spill-free funnel so we can pour in a bunch of brake fluid and we don't have to worry about the reservoir running out of fluid while we're bleeding the brakes. Some gloves to protect our hands from the brake fluid and some shop towels to protect the paint, as the brake fluid is extremely corrosive to paint and we don't want it making contact. So first things first, we'll pop the hood here. And popping off this cover under your hood here will reveal our brake fluid reservoir. Pop off the cap here, lay down a shop towel next to your reservoir, and lay our cap down out of the way here. As you can see, my reservoir is full of brake fluid. We are going to want to pump this out because we're doing a full brake flush and we don't want to have to pull through all of that fluid. I'll just be using an empty jug and a small pump to do so. Now I'll be using the no spill funnel with the D flange, which matches up with this reservoir to make a tight seal. Now we can fill up this funnel, which essentially extends our reservoir, and that way we can bleed the entire system without having to continuously refill our reservoir. Now I'll jack up the rear of the vehicle to remove the rear wheels. Removing the rear wheels gives us access to the bleeder valve, which is located on the front of the caliper, hidden in the back here. Now the bleeding sequence on this BMW is right rear, right front, left front. A little crowded on the other side, so I'll bleed the right rear, and then I'll show you the process on the left rear here. So numerous adapters and hoses are included with the Actron vacuum pump for applications on numerous different vehicles. I've set up the pump for this vehicle in specific. I use the small size right angle adapter. We have the 24-inch section of clear hose going from the bleeder valve to the collection cup, then a short piece of hose to go into the cup itself. 12-inch section going to the pump. The clear hose is important so we can visually see the air bubbles being drawn out of the system. Something crucial to this job is using the included sealant on all of your connections. So I've applied sealant to all of the hose connections, all of the plastic connections, and of course to the vacuum pump itself. And I even put some on the rim of the collection cup here just to ensure we don't have any leaks. A simple way to test this is once you have the cup on there, you can put your finger on the end of the hose, pump this up to 15-20 psi, and you hope to see on the pressure gauge that the pressure doesn't drop. If it does, it means you have a leak, and you should check over the system to make sure you've sealed all of your connections. Alright, so it took a little bit, but I did the right side. Now here we are on the left side, ready to bleed this caliper. Definitely a good idea to grab yourself a magnetic shop light so you can see what you're doing, and so you can see the air bubbles and whatnot in the tubing. So we'll grab the included sealant, take a tad of that, and we'll spread it on the bleeder valve itself, screw our collection cup onto the pump, and we'll take the adapter and we'll fit it onto the bleeder valve, and we'll vacuum this up to about 20 psi. Watch the gauge and make sure the pressure isn't decreasing. If it is, it means you have a leak. If your gauge is holding steady, that means you have a good seal, and we can proceed to crack the bleeder valve with our 9mm wrench. At which point you'll see fluid and air starting to flow in the hose. Remember to keep your pressure above 10 psi at least. And the objective here is to keep pumping until we see nice, clean, clear fluid coming through from the reservoir and no more air bubbles. We want to evacuate all the air from the system. On the right side, I had to empty this cup about 4 or 5 times before I started to see no air bubbles, at which point, while keeping pressure in the pump, we close the bleeder valve and remove the hose. So when your cup's about full, you want to close the bleeder valve, to ensure no air gets into the system. So that's closed. We can remove the adapter, relieving the pressure. We can unscrew our cup here and dump it somewhere to dispose of the waste. Then simply reattach your cup and repeat the identical process. Once you've purged all of the air from the system, you'll no longer see any air bubbles. Stuff will start to move very slowly and the pressure will drop incredibly slow on this gauge here because the fluid is much more dense than air. So at this point, we can close the bleeder valve, tighten it down, and remove the pump. So at this point, we've bled both the rear calipers. We'll now move on to bleeding the right front brake, and then the left front brake is our final caliper to bleed, and we will have flushed out the entire brake system. So I'm gonna go ahead and work on the front brakes. It's the identical process as in the rear. Get back to you once I'm done with that. Alrighty, so I just finished up bleeding the front. Just a quick note, it is an 11mm in the front opposed to a 9mm in the rear. And the front brakes are gonna take a lot less time than the rear brakes given they're so much closer to the reservoir. You really don't have to draw that much fluid through to bleed them out. The rear brakes do take substantially longer, so just be patient with the bubbles in the rear, and the front will go much quicker. So now that we've got all of the calipers and all of the lines bled, we can remove our funnel. If you have any residual fluid, you can use this included plunger to plug up the funnel and then remove the excess fluid, put it back into a container or whatnot. But it looks like I used just the right amount, so reinstall the cap here. Wipe off any residue, and we just have to reinstall this cover. And once you do so, the brake flush and bleeding is complete, and you can now test out your new brake. Obviously, it's advisable to test out your brakes in your driveway if you're able to do so. If not, be very cautious when testing them out. You may need to pump the brakes a bit for them to work properly. But I'll take this out for a quick ride, and I'll let you know how they feel when I get back. Alright, I just went for a quick spin, and right off the bat, I'm telling you, bleeding your brakes makes a tremendous difference in your braking performance. Much firmer pedal feel, much stronger braking, much more responsive, just way better overall. So I'm really glad I did this. What actually got me to bleed my brakes was I was having some squeaking coming from my front right brake, I believe. And a lot of the time that's because of debris on your pads and rotors, but my pads and rotors are very new and clean. So I knew that wasn't the case, and it was actually because there was some air in the line and the brake wasn't fully engaging, so it was squeaking under light braking. Bleeding the brakes completely resolved the problem. It's dead silent now, much stronger braking. So overall, I would highly recommend you bleed your brakes if you have any squeaking or if you just want to improve your braking performance. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please leave a like below and subscribe if you've yet to do so, and I'll see you next time on JD Cars.